Travis Reier and Charlie Potter of the BamaOnline.com staff with another edition of Instant Analysis. This one just outside Wednesday's practice. We're in Coleman Coliseum, as you can probably tell behind us. That is the presence of Big Shot Bob, Robert Ory, as we talk some football here on a Wednesday afternoon. And Charlie, obviously a huge week. The Crimson Tide travels to Athens for really what in a lot of ways could be an elimination game in terms of its Southeastern Conference hopes, certainly college football playoff hopes. It's a must-win situation, not used to this early in the season for this program over the last 7 or 8 years. Talk about what you sense coming from this team. I know Monday, hearing some comments from Reggie Ragland and some of the guys on the defensive side of the ball, sounded like they were ready to go.
Yeah, it's a mixture of excitement and a little bit of anger. You can tell that these guys realize that they let a game slip away from them in the Ole Miss game, and for lack of a better word, they just seem kind of pissed off. And I think that's a good thing if you're Alabama. You want to see those guys with a little bit of fire heading into a game on the road where you're an underdog for the first time in 6 years. So they're focused. There's a lot of guys from Georgia that they've brought up that are excited to go back home. So there's a mixture of a lot of good emotions, I guess, rolling on the facility.
The marquee matchup that everyone's pointing to, that Georgia rush offense with Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, veteran offensive line going against the Alabama defense, specifically an ultra-talented and deep defensive front seven. I think that this is a game where Alabama was built for this type of stuff. Yeah. Nick Saban, I think, over the long haul has said, look, LSU in terms of talent is probably going to be up there with us among SEC schools, and the way they play is a lot similar to the way Georgia plays on the offensive side of the ball. So really shouldn't be that tough of a preparation, I wouldn't think, because Alabama plays that way too.
Oh, no doubt. Nick Chubb is a talented running back, but like you said, the defensive front and Alabama's defensive scheme is built around this offense that they're going to face. One thing that you mix in is a new quarterback in Grayson Lambert. He's been really efficient in the first 4 games, but he hasn't faced a defense like Alabama's. Alabama's secondary is continuing to improve, and he's yet to throw an interception. He's yet to really had any pressure in his face. I think that's going to change this weekend. But I think, the focus is going to be on stopping Nick Chubb and Sony Michel and Keith Marshall, and if they do that, that's probably going to make life a little bit harder on Grayson Lambert.
Studying Georgia on video this week and sort of looking at Wisconsin simultaneously, there's a lot of similarities. Yeah. And I think like what you saw with Wisconsin, more so than just Chubb and Michel in the running game, I think the linebackers for Alabama, Minka Fitzpatrick, those kind of guys in the passing game with those tight ends, Jeb Blazevich. I always get that one wrong, but the backs and the tight ends, a couple of tight ends that Georgia likes to use. I think that's where Georgia's going to look to work, as you said, in the quick passing game, because, and we talked about this a little bit before the shoot, not a difficult matchup for Alabama in terms of the quarterback potentially hurting you with his legs. You know where he's going to be.
Right. That was an emphasis today out there. Tosh DuPois was making that pretty clear. And the outside linebackers have extensively worked on what looks like pass rushing drills this week. So I think that's going to be a major emphasis. But, as you pointed out, the tight ends in the passing game, I think that could be an area where Georgia exploits Alabama. We saw it early in the Ole Miss game. They went to Evan Ingram against Reggie Ragland, and it looked like that was going to be money all day. And the Rebels never really went back to that play call, which was a head-scratcher. So I think if you're watching film of Alabama games, I think that's where you want to attack them, and Georgia has the tools to do it. But as we mentioned, I think at the same time, if they apply pressure to Lambert, he does not have the tools to be able to escape that, and I think they could rattle him early.
I think they're going to be very aggressive with their pass rush when they can. I think Georgia knows that. I think they're going to be looking to get the ball out of his hand very quickly. Not that Georgia doesn't have decent offensive tackles, because they do. They can protect, but it's not a concern for Alabama this week as far as mush rush versus being aggressive. They can go after this guy. We talk about tackling, and it sounds so simple, but, man, it's going to be critical this week, especially in that front seven. Reuben Foster, Reggie Ragland, Sean Dion Hamilton, when he's in there, they have got to get these guys on the ground, because I don't like the matchup if they get into the secondary. Right. Alabama doesn't have a Landon Collins back there this year, so keep an eye on, I would guess, tackle totals for linebackers versus safeties this week.
Yeah, and another factor in that is it's probably going to be raining, so that makes life even harder for those guys. But Reggie Ragland took a stand. He's speaking up as a vocal leader. I mean, that doesn't help you in terms of tackling or anything like that, but they seem to have their heads on right. So
moving to the other side of the ball, conversely, Alabama's offense, perhaps wet conditions. I don't know if they have a real mutter in the backfield. I don't know if Derrick Henry's necessarily built for a sloppy track, maybe like a Nick Chubb is. So you worry about that a little bit, I guess, but the feeling still is that maybe not as much as the fans would like. The running game will take center stage, at least early on, you would think, Saturday against that Georgia defense that is really built around perimeter pass rushers. They want you to throw and get into second and longs if you don't complete passes.
Right. I mean, I think especially if it is raining, Alabama will be running the football. And as you said, that doesn't really match what Derrick Henry is able to do. He needs several yards to get his legs churning in the mud. That's tough to do. I mean, I think the back that they have that's most capable of doing things like that and most comparable to Nick Chubb just in body type and how he runs the ball is Damian Harris, but he's still a true freshman. How much are you going to give him on the road, especially not even that, but with Bo Scarborough coming back? I just don't know. It'll be interesting to see, if Henry can't get going, Drake's not the type of runner to do that too, but what happens in the passing game from there on?
Yeah, it does. And Bo Scarborough, how much is he a factor? It's been a big question this week out there at practice. He's involved, I can tell you that, and you've reported all week. He's not a scout team guy this week, at least not while we're out there. So between running back, H-back, I guess a guy that could have multiple roles in the game if they trust him to take care of his responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is Bo's going to have to knock off some rust. I mean, when's the last time he actually played in a football game? And he's going to have to, he's been playing scout team ahead of this week, and I'm sure he's gotten reps in there at some point. But how much of the offense does he know? How much are they going to trust him with, like you said? And if they do, I mean, he can be used all over the field. We saw him at H-back today, and he could be used in a role where if the conditions permit, we could see Henry, Drake, and Bo on the field at the same time, which would definitely have Alabama fans salivating out there on the field. It'll just be interesting to see how they use him and how much they trust him. I mean, I think at most we'll definitely see him on special teams. I see him getting a carry or two just to see where things stand, but it'll definitely be interesting to keep an eye on.
And you touched on it, the passing game. That's where it's going to be critical. And kind of like Georgia, I'm expecting more of a quick passing game with Jacob Coker because I think that's what, after 4 games, seems to fit him.
That's what you have.
You get him the ball, you give him a read, and he can make throws like that. When you try to go play action and it takes a while to develop and the route's got to get run and the protection has to be really good and teams have been bringing people right up the pipe, it's been tougher for them. I think, 3 of his interceptions have come on deep balls now off play action that takes time. But we've seen him make some good throws either outside the pocket or, again, no play action. Get it to him, give him a throw, and he can make it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in order to get him comfortable in a hostile environment, because it's going to be a hostile environment. I mean, Georgia fans are looking forward to this. You need to have those intermediate throws. I mean, get the ball to Richard Mullaney, to O.J. Howard, even Kenyon Drake in those intermediate throws, and it opened things up for everybody. I still see them trying to take a shot deep. I mean, that's what they've done. It's failed to connect at this point, but I think you go with what you have early in terms of trying to see success.
Yeah, I think Calvin Ridley's a guy you've got to feature, and whether you want to or not, whether he's a true freshman, whether you're still waiting on Ardarius Stewart to sort of get to that consistency that you want out of him, Ridley is the one guy in terms of getting separation, both in routes and after the catch. He looks like that guy. So it'll be interesting to see how much of a load they put on them. But, we talked about tight ends and running backs in the passing game. And as we saw in the second half against Ole Miss, that's another area where O.J. Howard, Derrick Henry, they can do some things to help you win the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're going to have to do. Going back to Ridley, too, is I think that if you're going to attempt those deep balls, I think you already mentioned this, but he's the guy that can get separation. Ardarius Stewart hasn't done that. I don't doubt his athletic ability or anything like that, but he hasn't shown that breakaway speed to do that. I mean, I think if you're
against Lyle Monroe,
if you're going to take a shot downfield, you got to go with the guy that has speed, and right now that is Ridley. I mean, Robert Foster's not there. That's the guy that steps in to do that.
I think you're absolutely right. I think Ardarius Stewart can be a really good number 2, but Ridley is the one guy that looks like he has the ingredients of a true number 1. So, Charlie Potter, I'm Travis Reier. Keep it right here on BamaOnline.com for all your Alabama-Georgia coverage over the upcoming weekend.